From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. Depending how this gets edited, that you might hear two intros to this. With me, as always, is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast and the authority on Michigan craft beer. His name is Sean. Sean, how are you doing today?
I am just Jim Dandy. John, glad to be back. Glad to be talking with you.
Since you threw me off the intro game, do you want to tell people what this damn show is about? Because I totally skipped over that.
Yeah, I can do that. This show is a show about consumption. So we've been basically talking about movies, a lot of horror movies, actually, as of late. But, you know, we're trying to find our sea legs and evolve this show, but it's about consumption.
It is. And today's not going to stray too far from what we've been doing, but that's all right. So what have you been up to? I know, just a little behind the curtain, we've had a little bit of an elongated break. You at home wouldn't have noticed that because we continue to crank out episodes in the weirdest timeline ever, but you're still getting an episode every week. You don't have to go into any, personal details or anything, but what have you been catching up on over the last month or so since we recorded last?
Yeah, we recorded last for Escape from New York. It's been about a month, third month and a half.
Almost a month to the...
Oh, it's only been a month. Okay. I was thinking it was longer than that. Oh, I had...
It does feel that way.
Yeah. We talked about it before the break that you won't notice, but I had back surgery, so I've been kind of spending a lot of time watching a lot of shows. And the thing that's funny about that is I've spent a lot of time watching TV, but because the TV that I'm watching is like in the common area of my house, when my kids are home, I feel like I shouldn't watch anything that's not appropriate for them to watch. So I've been watching a lot of Cheers, watching a lot of Seinfeld. I finished.
That's not necessarily a terrible thing. If you were going to tell me I was going to be on my back for a month and I had to watch Cheers and Seinfeld, I actually might be okay with that.
I've rediscovered the genius that is Cheers. I mean, there are nights when I watch like 6 episodes in a night. I'm like, okay, it's time to go to bed. But I did actually finish House of the Dragon. I don't know if I talked about finishing that before everything went down. And the other movie
so.
I watched, I
don't even
watched,
remember if you'd started it at that point.
Yeah, I remember talking about a couple episodes. I finally watched all of the Blade Runner, whatever the new Blade Runner is with Ryan Gosling from a couple years back. I just never watched the whole thing.
Thank good.
Yeah, it's actually really good. I liked it a lot. And the other big notable movie besides what we're going to talk about today that I watched just a couple days ago was a movie called Dead Man's Shoes, which is a movie from, I think, about 2006, 2004. And it's got Paddy Considine, who's in House of the Dragon, coincidentally, as the king, whatever his name is in that. It has a bunch of other, it's a British movie. It's a bunch of other kind of unknowns. And that's a really interesting movie. It's about this guy who goes into the British Army. And when he comes back, his brother is, learning impaired. And he's had some problems with some local guys, some drug dealers, some guys in the town that they're from, and they've been picking on him. So he comes back Paddy Considine comes back to extract his revenge. And there's a little bit of a twist in the movie, but he comes back to extract his revenge on these, I'd say there's like 6 guys in total. It's super indie. You can tell by the audio because the audio is so bad. It's, besides having the really thick accents, which I'm kind of accustomed to being able to decipher because I lived with someone with a really strong accent my entire life, but the audio is just really bad. So you got the TV cranked up like max and the mix is really bad. So they had like one mic rather than miking everybody individually.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard with the accents to hear all that.
Have you noticed that with modern, I guess we'll call them B movies, that they can seem to get a lot of things right with effects and just the general look of a movie, but like audio is still just shit on so many of them.
Audio, really, I mean, being, producing video content, audio is the thing that sets A level from B level every time. If you have good, if you have good audio and the video's, mediocre, you can get away with a lot. People will watch a lot, but if the audio is just ass, then it's hard to keep an audience.
Well, it's hard to follow what the hell's going on if you can't hear it.
Exactly.
I mean, you can see a lot of stuff going on, but it will off you saying, what the hell just happened? Why did I see this? Any other stuff that you've been catching up or watching or catching up on?
I have watched so much stuff that I have forgot more than I care to remember, I guess. There's just been so much.
Well, I'll kind of rattle off some of the things I went through, and I'm not going to spend too much time on most of these because I almost feel like I was doing like pre-homework for this show because a lot of them will probably get episodes at some point. Got about halfway through Big Mouth season 6, which you probably won't get an episode about that. But that show is Nick Kroll and Nick Kroll and Nick Kroll playing Nick Kroll and a bunch of other people as kids with a hormone monster, if you're not familiar with it. First few seasons, really funny. By season 6, it's kind of like, okay, this joke's worn thin. So I'm struggling to get through it, even though they're short little cartoons. On the TV side, I've also been kind of watching through the Hard Knocks in season with the Arizona Cardinals. We mentioned earlier when the Lions were on that I think both of us are kind of shoo-ins for that kind of show. Just we'll watch whatever with it, and this is no exception, although it's, I don't know, I know that's on the Plex server that we use, but have you been watching it, or is it just getting put on there?
No, I'm caught up.
Is it just me, or does it seem kind of like not a whole lot's happening with that team?
Yeah, it doesn't. They pretty much just sum up the games. Like a lot of it is game footage, and I think training camp lends to that a little bit more because you're starting to learn who these characters, these players are. And I feel like within season, it's a little bit different because they're probably new characters to a lot of people. You don't necessarily follow every team and all these kind of bit players on these teams, but it seemed a little bit more like this is the game.
Right.
Yeah, this is the game footage. We're going to Mexico City and we're going to spend, 15 minutes talking to this one guy who happens to be from Mexico.
Yeah. I thought they did a better job with the Colts in season last year. This one just, I don't know. Obviously, I'm going to keep watching it, but it's not really doing a whole lot other than giving me something that's about an hour long that I can have morning coffee with and not feel overwhelmed by. So that's a good thing. Then last on the TV side, this just came out on Friday, but I managed to get through all of Wednesday, the show, over the weekend. Have you, or do you have interest in starting that?
One of my kids is really into the Addams Family for some reason, and I don't know if this would be appropriate for her. She's 11, and I know it's like a TV 14
probably
thing.
Would be. Well, I don't know how, I don't want to say well adjusted. That makes you sound horrible, but I don't know how they deal with like stuff like that. But I would say this is about on par with any PG-13 Tim Burton as far as what's in it.
Yeah.
There's nothing too bad in it as far as that goes. My quick crash thoughts on it I'm not going to break down every episode right now. That'd be insane. But Jenna Ortega as Wednesday is awesome in it. Pretty much everyone else that's cast in the Addams Family, aside from Thing, who's CG, feels very off to me. Like there's something real. They took all the eccentricness and all the kookiness out of the Addams Family and just made it very like, I don't know, like Latin love story for some reason, which is a weird take coming from Tim Burton.
Is Burton heading this?
He's the director on it. Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know if he did every episode. His name's on every episode.
Yeah. I'm looking at the poster and his name is right on it.
Yeah. It's, as far as I know, it's a Tim Burton, joint or whatever. There's parts of it that are kind of good. If you like Tim Burton, you should definitely give it a try. I do like the Addams Family. And as you know, I'm a Jenna Ortega fan, which is why, like, between the two is why I gave this a shot. And I kind of hit a point where I was like, well, I'm far enough in this now. I might as well finish it. That gets sometimes. But if I had to go back and watch it again, I'd probably skip it. I mean, it's a relatively quick watch though. But yeah, if you have someone, it is kid appropriate for the most part. I don't think I'd show it to a 5-year-old, but like a preteen or something like that, there's nothing too bad in there. The monsters that are in it almost look like they're DreamWorks animation on top of a Tim Burton movie, if that makes any sense. So they're very cartoony.
Does it have all the parents not all the parents, but the parents, Pugsley, like all them? Are they in the show or are they just kind of bit parts? Or are they not in it at all?
They're bit parts. Like there's one episode that kind of has a storyline that kind of goes around Morticia and Gomez, and Pugsley's like kind of there a little bit, but it's a really stupid episode because it's like, so they lead you into this spot where you're like, oh, okay, I'm kind of interested what's going in. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to derail that and have this little bullshit side quest about Morticia and Gomez that doesn't really go anywhere, that doesn't really give you anything. And then by the end of the episode, they go back to Addams Family Manor and we're back with Wednesday in the school. So it's really a story that is supposed to be just on her. The other Addams Family characters, with the exception of Thing, are barely in it.
I see Luis Guzman plays Gomez.
Yeah, and I like him as an actor. Like in general, I think he's a good actor. I think he is horribly miscast in this role. And I'm not trying to get on the because he got a ton of hate on that before this show even came out. I'm not trying to hate on it from that aspect. I'm saying I've watched it and I think he was miscast. Not that I think he shouldn't have gotten the chance to play the character, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, he just doesn't. I like him as an actor. He just doesn't seem like the Gomez
eccentric.
Role. Yeah, and Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia. It's a very interesting.
She's again. This might be because she's in it so little, but she's kind of fine in the role. Like she doesn't like or dislike her. She's gotten really curvy over the years. I didn't realize that until this show. Like, I'm not saying she's needs to get on the treadmill or something, but she is quite a bit extra C's. Since last movie I really remember watching her in was High Fidelity, which was somewhere in the 90s.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's filled out since then, but whatever.
Older.
So, yeah.
Gravity.
Past that, a couple movies that I'm not going to really go over too much just because, like I said, we'll probably talk about them in detail at some point, but caught the much talked about Terrifier 2, and I'm sure you're just thrilled that you're going to have to watch that at some point.
Absolutely.
And then picked up and watched Clerks 3 and still kind of annoyed with that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because I watched that. That's another one that I watched.
Yeah. Do you have similar annoying? Well,
we'll save it.
A different episode. Yeah.
Teaser.
The only other thing I wrote down that I kind of caught up on over the last month that might or might not be worth talking about was the Weird Al biopic. Are you even familiar with this?
Yeah. Isn't it just called Weird?
Yeah, I think so.
I've seen it on my Amazon Fire, all over the place. I just haven't watched it yet.
So if you're going to watch it, you really need to be in the mood for something dumb, really dumb, because it is a stupid movie. I watched it. I got home from the bar and put it on, and I had moments where I'm like, this is funny. Then I had other moments where I'm like, this is dumb. So it kind of hits that on both sides. I've heard people say it's genius because it's a Weird Al movie that's parodying a parody of Weird Al's life while he's making songs about I'm like, you're overthinking it. It's not, it's a comedy movie about Weird Al. There's things that are fun in it. Seeing as you can pretty much watch it, as far as I can tell, you can watch this movie for free, unless you just hate Weird Al. I don't see why you would not give it a try, but it's certainly not going to win any Oscars or anything like that.
Why deprive yourself of the Weird Al story?
Why would you? Especially when it's totally fictionalized.
Right.
That's pretty much all I got as far as stuff that I wanted to kind of hit on. I don't really so the other stuff we'll have to go into more depth with. Did I miss any, or did I jog your memory on anything you wanted to bring up before we jump into the basement of this topic?
No, I'm ready to dive right into the pool in the basement of this topic. I don't know if there's a pool in the basement, but with all that extra square footage,
there's everything else in there. Why not? All right. So if you haven't figured out yet, the movie that we're talking about today is the movie Barbarian. This is a 2022 release. The synopsis of this movie is very short. It is one line. A woman staying in an Airbnb discovers that the house she has rented is not what it seems, which I guess is somewhat accurate. I'm going to put it out there right now. If we're going to talk about this movie, you're getting a spoiler warning right off the top, because this is one of those movies I don't think we can really talk about without kind of ruining it to some extent. Fair?
Yeah, I don't think there's really much that we can get into without, like you said, kind of spilling the beans on the entire story.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen this already and you're interested in it, I definitely go check it out first. It is currently probably somewhere. I don't know. This hasn't been out all that long, so I'm guessing that you can rent this right now, but it might be somewhere for free too. I see Sean typing. He's probably going to tell you where you can find it.
Supposedly, you can watch it on HBO Max, and it's also for rent on Apple TV, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, Vudu, Microsoft DirecTV. You can buy it on the Apple TV, Google Play, YouTube, and all those good places for about $15. You can rent it for about $4, and it looks like it's on HBO Max for subscribers.
So yeah, it's pretty readily available as long as you're willing to depart with at least $4.
HBO Max had a Black Friday sale. You could have gotten in on that. I think it was $2.99 a month for 3 months.
They did that with Screenbox too. It was like 99 cents for the first 3 months. I actually thought about jumping on that, and then I forgot about it till just now. So I guess I'm not jumping on that.
Maybe a little late.
I guess so. Do you have a better synopsis of this movie, or is that where we want to start, or how do we want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I think I wrote down a decent synopsis. So the way this movie starts off, Tess, who is played played by Georgina Campbell. Like the IMDb synopsis says, she rents an Airbnb. It's in the Brightmoor neighborhood of Detroit. If you're not from Detroit, Brightmoor is not a very great place. It's probably one of those neighborhoods that you would have heard that houses were selling for $100. I mean, it's pretty dilapidated. So when she gets this
Aside
Airbnb,
from this house,
yeah, and we find that out. But as she comes up to the house, the beginning of the movie, she pulls up in her Jeep. She's getting out. She tries to get in the door, and she realizes that the key in the lockbox is gone. Knocking on the door, someone's moving around, stirring around in there. There's somebody else that's already in there. We find out he's Keith. That's played by Bill Skarsgard, who also played Pennywise.
Pennywise the clown.
Right. And he's in tons of horror-y kind of stuff. He's also rented the same online or the same property from a different online rental service. The way that the movie initially plays out, you're very suspicious of Keith because he seems unrealistically nice, overly considerate. So I think that with the tropes that horror movies kind of play into, you are led to believe that maybe he's going to be the bad guy. What happens is Tess goes out the next day for a job interview. She wakes up in the middle of the night for her door to be open, slightly ajar, and she hears this weird noise. She goes out. Keith is still sleeping. So she goes to this job interview the next day for I think she's going to be like a coordinator for a documentary film or something. And the person she's talking to that she's interviewing with tells her like, oh, hey, where are you staying in the city? And she's like, well, I'm staying in Brightmoor in this house. And the lady's like, do me a favor. Leave immediately. Go stay somewhere else. There's a convention in town. All the other hotels near the area were sold out. But,
bullshit.
Us being from near Detroit, I'm thinking like you could just drive to, I don't know, 20 minutes and stay in a nice hotel. You go to Troy or something. That's just down the road a bit. But, if you're not from the area, I understand. So Tess gets back.
And she also has a fucking cell phone that has GPS where she looked up the rental. That's not okay. I'll bitch in a little bit. Go back to what you're saying.
Well, there are a lot of holes that can be poked, but she comes back to the house. The door is locked, and the key gone? No, she gets in the house.
No, it's in there because she gets in the house.
She gets in the house, and she gets kind of. She notices the basement's open. She goes down to check out the basement and sees that there's like a hidden passageway in the basement, and she goes to check it out.
Skipped a huge part of why she has a hard time getting in the house.
Why is that?
There's the bum who's like, hey, lady, get the fuck out of here. Who freaks her out, who turns into another misguided savior, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that. But she gets locked in the basement. Keith comes back and she's knocking on the window. She finds a secret passageway and she doesn't go too far down, but she finds like a dungeon room that's like a room with just a mattress on a frame and there's no frame. There's just a mattress and there's a video camera. Is there?
It's like a day bed or something like that.
And there's a video camera aimed at the bed. She freaks out. She goes back, bangs on the window. Keith comes back, lets her in. He goes downstairs. She puts a chair in front of the door so it doesn't close on her. And long story short, Keith kind of disappears for a little while. He starts yelling for her. She goes down to check him out. We run into our first anomaly of the movie. And then the movie suddenly and abruptly changes focus. And we change focus to AJ, who is played by Justin Long. And he is like a scriptwriter or something?
I got the impression he was an actor of some kind.
I thought he was writing a script. But regardless,
whatever.
He gets
He's
a phone
in Hollywood.
call. Yes, he's a Hollywood guy. He gets a phone call basically saying that a co-star or someone that's worked on this pilot that he's working on has accused him of rape, and his reputation, his career is about to go down the toilet, so he needs to liquidate some assets. He owns the house in Brightmoor, and he's going to come back to Detroit to try and get the house all settled so he can sell it. When he gets there, he realizes that there have been multiple people that he thinks may be squatting because their belongings are still there, the car is still outside, and he decides that he's going to investigate this house after going out with his buddy. And, you kind of find out he's not really a nice guy. Like, he probably did rape this woman, but he is so clueless to the whole situation. And I found it really kind of funny, this part where he's in the house and he's measuring square footage and he finds the secret passageway, but he doesn't think anything of it. He starts measuring the square footage to see if he can add it on as part of the property listing. So I thought that was really amusing. I thought that was actually really funny. I like them adding that kind of levity to the situation where there's so much serious stuff going on, so much tension that they're trying to build up, but they have this character there that's just this dunce who is kind of playing it for laughs until he suddenly is no longer able to play it for laughs.
I mean, he still even has moments like that, even after the fact. So as far as things that work in this movie, you mentioned an anomaly. Like I can't really say too many things about this movie that I liked without it kind of piggybacking off of something that I didn't like. This movie is, for me, the definition of like modern horror in a way that I don't give a shit about. This is very, very much so the movie that's like, we're going to put you into this creepy room. We're going to turn down the lights. We're going to drop all the sound. You see stuff kind of in the dark. Like you'll see like a jet black screen and you almost just see like pixels moving at certain points. So you know something down there is going to happen. You know it's coming. And it's not even so much that what happens is scary per se, but it's like, okay, well, we're going to flash lights, crank the sound to 11, and it's more of a sensory overload than an actual scare at this point. Now, in contrast to that, my notes are very bad for this movie, but there are a couple notes. My first thing I said is giant naked woman violence is entertaining, which is kind of what you get right out the gate once you start kind of finding out what the fuck is going on in this basement.
That should be the tagline for this movie, by the way.
It should be the tagline for this one. I would have given it more points for that. But even when you get something like that, as soon as you get that, like you said, you're jumped into this other scenario where all of a sudden we're on Laguna Beach or whatever the hell it is, or is that California? I'm assuming
it's California. I think it's the Pacific Coast Highway that he's on. Like stereotypical I'm in California scene.
Right. You know, the things that they do with Pennywise in this, you're right. It is absolutely the trope that you're led to believe that this guy is going to be the biggest problem in this house. You're led down a path of saying, okay, this guy is, clearly here with intention to F this chick up and whatever. And the fact that he's Bill Skarsgard and looks creepy to begin with doesn't help anything. And he very unceremoniously just gets dead pretty quick. And that's kind of okay because at least you don't have to spend the rest of the movie wondering if he's somehow involved in it or you're not overthinking it.
He gets dispatched probably like 20 minutes into the movie. And that's even with the test piece going to visit the director, the whole kind of side, to use your terminology, a side quest to get this job. He's kind of, even that he's probably, his screen time is maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
I mean, in fairness to this movie, it doesn't really this movie felt long to me because of my experience with it. But in reality, this movie isn't really that, like, the runtime's not a problem with this movie. It doesn't fuck around like trying to putz around with totally useless like side stories or stuff like that. Like everything that's in this movie as far as the story is concerned is for the most part put in there to try and lead you to the end of this story that they're trying to tell. I just think they kind of shit the bed when it came to actually telling that story in an entertaining way. So
it very much follows this almost kind of Tarantino-esque, like broken up storyline. While it is for the most part continuous, from one piece of the story to the next with Justin Long to the next piece where we kind of learn a little bit more about the history of the house. That's out of sequence, but yeah, it jumps around quite a bit. So it uses this really kind of different element of storytelling where you kind of get all the stuff, all the plot front loaded, and then you get like this almost explainer piece that tells you kind of what happened, what the naked woman is, like why she's down there, how she got down there, who these people are, and the bum and everything. You get his little piece of the story. He kind of fills it in. I like the way that the story was told in those kind of bite-sized pieces, but it also kind of makes you feel like the movie's a little bit longer maybe than it actually is. So it's no slouch. It's an hour and 42 minutes. It's not this like, concise 87-minute movie.
But how many movies have we watched that we've said, if you could get this down to an hour 40, this wouldn't be nearly as bad as if you tried to stretch it out 2 hours and 20 minutes.
I think, and I think that the 1 hour and 42 is a really good runtime. I didn't have any watch checks in this movie. Like, really, how much longer do we have until this is over? I mean, it moves along pretty well.
I don't know that I watch check, but I did feel like, oh, for fuck's sake, can we get this over with? Like, but that's, again, I'm getting the impression talking about that we're coming at this movie from different angles too.
You want to talk about that?
What's that?
Coming at it from different angles?
As far as like how we felt about it?
Yeah, because when you mentioned that it has a lot of when you say the piece about the like dark screen, hard to see things kind of move in the distance, you get the flashlights and the sound gets cranked and then everything's like heightened and almost overstimulating. I think the difference in the experience that you have versus the experience that I have is I don't have a whole, like, I almost have written off horror movies that occur after the 90s because I love, and I know that you do too, but I really love practical effects. I love the slimy, the goopy, the disgusting kind of just ridiculous over the top horror kind of stuff, or the gory kind of stuff. Yeah. But I feel like you have, by choice, I have decided to fall off of the bandwagon, not the bandwagon, but like I just opened the car door and rolled out as it was moving on horror once it hits past like 99, maybe early 2000s. And you're much more versed in the genre. So I think for you've seen a lot more of it than I have. So it's kind of, for me,
so I say this with a grain of salt because this movie is not, if there's another movie that's similar to this as far as the plot line and what actually happens in this movie, I'm not aware of it. But the feel and the way this movie plays and like how you're going from scene to scene, with the exception of that throwback scene that you're referring to, it just feels like a I'd say probably 2010. You could even go as far as 2000. It feels like that kind of horror movie. And I didn't look up what the budget was on this. And this feels like the kind of thing, though, where it's like we can make this relatively cheap, probably turn it around, and we'll release it in fall, and it will get like a lot of attention because it's a horror movie that the masses will like. It's not, in contrast to it, it's not Terrifier 2, where you almost have to be a certain kind of horror fan to even like attempt that movie. Where with this, it's like, most people who I think modern horror fans, if they think of a scary movie, this is kind of what they're thinking. They're going to get something creepy. They're going to get a house that looks like it's in, Brightmoor, Detroit, and at least in the basement. There's not going to be a whole, I don't think most horror fan, quote unquote, horror fans or modern horror fans want this excessive body. Like, what do we say when we like enjoy an 80s movie? It's got an excessive body count, some boobs in there, a bunch of gore, a bunch of slop, a bunch of like horrible acting, a bunch of things that
slop.
Right. A bunch of questionable dialogue and things that might or might not make sense, but you kind of go along with it. This movie has minimal, there's only 3-4 people that die in this movie?
Yeah, there's not even, the cast is tiny. I mean, all things considered, the working cast. I mean, there's a lot of people. Before we even started this, we were looking through the cast and saying, oh, Kate Bosworth is in this movie? When is she in this movie? She's in it for maybe like 10 seconds.
And that's if we even pick the right person that she is.
Could have been somebody totally different than who we thought it was.
Where was I going with that? What was I saying before this? Oh, you only see like 3 deaths or like 3 or 4 deaths in this movie. It's not like an excessive body count movie. The Justin Long's death has a little bit of grossness to it. So I did enjoy that. That's actually one thing I wrote down. I was like, you get a good eye poke scene in this, which that's been done ad nauseum in horror movies, both for better and worse, but it always seems to be something that I'm entertained by. The other things, though, that make this movie not work for me is that, you're taking that modern element and you're adding tropes to it that just really make it dumb. The most realistic part of this movie are the fucking Detroit cops that not only don't believe her and claim that she's a junkie, but also take her back to this house where she claims she was abducted and just fucking leave her there. Like, okay, well, I've heard people say like, that's the dumbest scene I've ever seen. I'm like, that's a Detroit cop.
Yeah, I didn't find that actually all that unbelievable.
No, I was like, that seems about right.
Go figure.
But Tess especially, and Justin Long, but She makes every stupid fucking decision that you can, like, basically from the start of this movie up until the end of this movie, you're led to believe that she's this relatively smart person in theory. You know, she goes and gets this job interview. It seems like she nails the interview and they immediately tell her, get the fuck out of Brightmoor. Before that, she's already shacked up with Pennywise the Clown for a night, even though, like you said, this is a modern time telling. She's on her iPhone right at the beginning. Like, there's no way that Detroit is booked to the point where you couldn't go to Novi 30 minutes away from Detroit, or, you know, if anyone's listening to this, they're like, what the fuck is Novi? But
it's the the sixth post office.
It is. Or was it the sixth train stop at one point?
I
Something
don't know,
like
some
that.
shit. Number 6, Novi.
Right.
Figure it out.
My point is, there's no reason she should have been in that house in the first place. If she's too fucking dumb to learn how to use her phone to find another Airbnb or another hotel in one night, that's fucking bullshit. And then every dumb thing that happens, like, she opens this door to this like dungeon basement thing and immediately says, you know, takes the Jordan Peele line and he goes, nope, walks up or tries to walk upstairs and gets out and then goes back in the fucking house. She almost gets killed by this like giant, like raging naked woman, gets away and, you know, has a hobo, the lifeguard, save her. And he's like, you better get the fuck out of here. She's coming out at dark. If you're here, she will, you know, kill you.
Yeah. And she's not the only one in there.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that's dumb. But so she gets away. Not only does she get away, she comes back to the house and then she breaks into the fucking house while it's dark. So we know some shit's going to happen. And again, in fairness, I did find the scene where the naked chick bursts open the door and starts screaming in the streets to be fairly entertaining. But
yeah, I wrote, she's loyal to a fault. Like she is.
Well, why is she loyal? Like,
and
what
I don't
is she
know.
being loyal to?
Because this is the movie, John. If she wasn't loyal, there would be no movie. I mean, she has a chance to escape. She feels like it's her responsibility. And AJ, who's one of the worst characters, who doesn't listen, who, hey, do this thing, and he does the exact opposite. He's like,
I like how he takes a paring knife down to the cellar to defend himself. Like, again, paring knife is not the weapon of choice, but if you're going to go with a kitchen knife, don't you want to go with maybe, I don't know, butcher knife, chef's knife, something. But she feels like it's her responsibility to go and save him. And as the movie goes on, I mean, she doesn't know how shitty of a person he is, but you realize that while he's this really shitty character, he's almost like the decisions that he makes in the situation that he's in are almost like a representation of the audience. Like, if you had this person you could use as a human shield, you probably would do it to get out of the situation. But, you know, doesn't mean he's a nice character. She would almost be willing to throw herself in front of him. But I think her stupidity is what, for me, and I don't know if it's apparent yet, but I really enjoyed this movie. And I think her being so stupid is what adds to the enjoyment of this movie for me. So did you just take this as a comedy of errors?
Yeah. And also kind of just looked at it. You know, I think we've watched every horror movie that 2022 has told us is going to be the movie that saves the genre.
We haven't watched Pearl yet, but I think that's the only one that we're missing.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I want to watch that based on the previous effort. But we watched Black Phone, which wasn't filmed this year, but was released this year. We watched X. We watched, what was the most recent one that we watched? There's one that we watched since then, and I can't think of what it was. But, you know, all these indie horror movies have been the movie that's going to save the genre. And this one feels the most, out of all that crop of all these movies, has, for me, been the most entertaining. And not to say that the genre needs to be saved, but this one feels like it's the one that actually deserves some of the hype, because I thought that in some ways almost a throwback to that 80s, 90s style horror movie that I really enjoyed.
You're going to have to defend that statement because I'm not seeing it.
I don't know, it's just dumb. It's just stupid dumb.
That's the best defense you could have given it.
Yeah, it's funny, stupid, dumb. It's like almost a, just to mention, you asked about the budget. It's estimated it was $4.5 million. I looked that up, but
I didn't ask. I didn't look it up. But that's, I mean, this, for what this movie is, I mean, I get for a $4.5 million movie. I mean, most of that's probably going to Justin Long and Skarsgard, but
well, he was a producer or something on the movie too.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Which one? Long or Skarsgard?
No, Skarsgård. Long, maybe too. I don't know. But I noticed Skarsgård's name in the credit, or I think even in the opening or something.
Was he?
Where he had some kind of piece to it. But it's just, like I said, it's just stupid dumb. Like, the characters are dumb. They do all the wrong things. All the things that watching in the theater, if you were watching this in the theater, you're the one yelling at the screen, like, don't do that. And she can hear you because she knows to do the opposite thing. The monster character, the woman character, that we meet Frank, that we meet later, the starter of all this madness, for better or worse. It's just, it has that monster kind of thing going on. It's just, I don't know. There's just some kind of, it had this element to it that just kind of reminded me of just those stupid, dumb 80s horror movies that I love. Like, it's not so bad it's good. It's not that, because it's not badly made. There's nothing like, it's very competent. The movie throughout is very competent.
I don't know why, because it's not nearly as eccentric as the movie I'm about to say, but it's almost got a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 vibe to it, mostly because of the underground part and the old man laying around his own shit type thing. But it's, choosing my words carefully, it's not nearly just flat out as entertaining as what that is. It's not as off the rails. I mean, granted, Hooper he thinks the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a comedy movie, which, okay.
Yeah, that says a lot.
But he went into the second one definitely trying to go for more of like he called it a black comedy movie. And at least that one, it's like, all right, well, this movie is a straight up acid trip. So I guess I can see that. But there's like Frank or whatever. Yeah. Frank, the guy who started all this shit. Like, when you come back to him, I guess probably 40 years later or whatever, and they finally come back, like, show this character again, it's AJ or Justin Long that runs into him, and he's just escaped this, like, torture chamber basically, and he immediately finds old Frank sitting there laying his own shit, and I can't really tell if he's like just crippled, paralyzed, or just old at this point. He's drinking piss or something like that.
Yeah, I don't even know what it is.
Why is this the guy that AJ is like, oh yeah, I'm going to help you out, man. I'm going to totally trust this guy, up until he doesn't. But
I think AJ is just such an idiot that he thinks that this guy's being held captive here too, because he was possibly being held captive, AJ and Tess.
I mean, maybe, but if I'm ever in a dungeon being held captive by a giant incest baby woman rampaging, I'm not trusting the fucking anything until I'm out of that house. Like, I'm sorry, old soiled man. You can sit there for another day until the police show up and don't do anything, just like they didn't do anything before. So
yeah, a whole lot of therapy would have to happen before I would feel like I could trust anybody.
Well, I'm certainly not a soiled old man who is drinking piss and watching VHS.
Hey, I resent that compliment.
Well,
compliment, remark.
You're not soiled.
It's true. Well, not that you know.
I'm assuming. So you're wearing a white shirt, so if you're soiled, I think I'm going to know.
I'm wearing 2 white shirts. That's the only, I have to say, after the surgery, I never wear white t-shirts. I've only worn white t-shirts for the last, 3 weeks. I don't know why I'm telling you that.
New lease on life?
No, I think it's because I don't want to put on my regular clothes. These are loose enough that I'm comfortable.
All right. Whatever you want to do, man.
Thank you. You can call me Bill. Frank, whatever this guy's name is.
Fuck this guy. So another thing I put on here as a positive, though, this movie does have one scene that I really enjoy because I say it doesn't happen enough. You do get to see a guy get his arm ripped off and beat to death with it, his own arm. Doesn't happen enough in movies.
You would think it would happen a lot more.
You would think, especially with the kind of crap that we've watched, but yeah. No. No, I can only think of it in a handful. It happened, well, in Shaun of the Dead, they rip off a limb and use it as a weapon, but not against the same person. But it should happen more, and it just flat out doesn't. I don't know. I don't have a whole ton more to add to this. I'm just going to start recycling things that annoy me about this movie if I do that. Do you want to get to hot dogs?
Yeah, let's do the hot dogs.
Why don't you lead us off on hot dogs?
Oh, you want me to lead you off on hot dogs?
Yeah, go ahead, because I don't know what I'm going to comp the hot dog scale to on this one.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna relay it to. Okay, I got it. All right, so for hot dogs, this may be a surprise to you that I'm going to rate it so highly, but I'm going to give it 8 hot dogs out of 11 mutant milk bottles. I just think that, like I just mentioned, just a few minutes ago, with the current crop of these 2022 horror movies that are supposedly going to save the genre as if it needs to be saved necessarily, I feel like this one, of all these movies that we watched, again, I can't even name them all. It seems like we've watched every hype horror movie that's come out this year, on purpose. I would even consider Hellraiser to be one of the ones that where everybody was saying,
forgot about that one.
This is the best Hellraiser ever. This one just held my attention the most. No watch checks. It wasn't like, how much longer is this movie? While the characters are dumb and they do stupid things and they're stupid people just in general, I feel like the story itself, the lore of the house, the Justin Long character, all the things about this house, about this neighborhood, even the setting, I feel like the setting, it being kind of Detroit in a setting, even though it probably wasn't filmed there. Was it?
Well, it was
that street,
the Brightmoor neighborhood. I don't know about wherever she goes and meets the
producer or the director or
whatever she is. Yeah, I don't know if that's. I know that's supposed to be, but I was like, that doesn't look familiar to me. But I know Brightmoor is because when it came out, someone was making a big deal about the fact that it was actually filmed in Brightmoor. So
yeah, and it really shows the desolation in that part of Detroit. But I also kind of feel like that kind of sucks because Detroit's come a long way in the last few years. But anyways, with it having that kind of hometown bent, I thought that kind of added to it. Like I said, the story is intriguing. The way it's told in that sort of nonlinear fashion, that's not a new thing. Obviously, we've seen it, for a long time. I didn't think I was going to like that at first, but I feel the way that they tell the story, and it was really abrupt. Like I said, when they went from that Tess and Keith, the Tess and Keith kind of part of the story, I felt like it really ended abruptly when we get to the AJ part. And at first, it kind of was like, wait, are they going to go back and tell us what happens to these people? I didn't like it at first, but I felt like it built enough of the story around these characters. And then to bring it back where the two stories, those two parts of the story merge, they did it in such a way, or the movie did it in such a way that it wasn't distracting. They kind of throw these tropes at you at first, like I said, with Keith being that just too nice of a guy, too trusting of a guy, or too considerate of a person. I don't watch enough movies of this genre that are recent to really say, like, has somebody else done that before? I don't know if anybody else has done something like that before, but I just found the whole package being just reminded me, like I mentioned earlier, just being like stupid, dumb fun. Like stupid, dumb fun. I don't think that we see enough of that in horror. I think indie horror these days just tries to be either as shocking as it can be, or as thrilling as it can be, or just too pretentious. And I felt like this one kind of was a little bit more down to earth, and that's what really made me like the movie so much.
You make valid points.
Thank you.
But
I try.
I'm going to give this 4 hot dogs out of 10 easily accessible Royal Oak Airbnbs.
Hey, that averages out to 6.
Is that what it does? Yeah, well, between the two of us,
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, this movie just, I didn't enjoy myself watching it. The things that I did like in it were too few and far between. The characters were, stupid characters are something that usually I'm a fan of, but in this particular instance, they annoyed the shit out of me. It didn't make me want to root for them or anything like that. It just made me kind of want rage naked woman to have her way with them, whatever that entailed. I actually did go back and watch this a second time, and I think I hated it even more the second time than I did the first time, so it will not be a third watch for me. About 4 is the best I can give this. Like I said, I can see why people are enjoying it, and I'm glad that people are enjoying it, but for me, I'd rather go back and watch Jason Takes Manhattan again, like him on a boat in Slimy, or more flop.
That'd be a no from me, dog. I think that this is probably the most diametrically opposed ratings that we've done since maybe Killer Clowns was close.
Terrifier, basically anything with clowns, we usually have a pretty distant.
Yeah, but I don't think you enjoyed
rating.
Terrifier to the extent that I enjoyed this, and me not liking Terrifier as much as you didn't like this. Well, that's good. It's good to have different opinions and different outlooks or whatever.
It's got to happen eventually, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to be us. We'll just change her to Do We Agree Monster or something like that.
Dewey Collusion Monster podcast.
You got anything else you want to tack on at the end of this?
No, I've said my piece.
Said your piece?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, since the last time we've recorded, there's been some changes. I mean, we're still around at crap.town. That is our site. That is definitely the best place to find us. But for all the people that like social stuff, we've kind of just joined everything because Twitter is kind of taking a shit all over. I don't know what's happening with Twitter right now. And I feel like it's only a matter of time before I wake up and it doesn't work. So pretty much any social media network that's out there, just search at Dewey Pod Monster. There's a good chance you'll find us. They're not getting updated as frequently as some of the other stuff because I don't understand them. But if one of them catches, I'm at least putting up, you can find our episodes and links to them there as well. Sean, what do you got going on?
Not much besides still recovering, but you can find my beer videos, and we're going to start bringing those back. And to make the announcement, John has joined the Draft Therapy family. Now it's the two of us, two dads. We're going to try and what a segue, king of the segue over here. We're going to try to do some more brewery visits, continue to do the reviews, continue to do the beer news. You can find that at youtube.drafttherapy.com. And if you want to follow a non-posting social media account, you can search up Draft Therapy on all the social media networks. Follow me there, and maybe that'll give me some motivation to actually post there. But yeah, that's what you can do with that.
I mean, someone's going to have to post on it eventually.
That's true. I mean, do they though? Do they have to?
I mean, it has its benefits. So
I'm not convinced.
I'm not paying $8 for it though.
True. Yeah. No blue check marks for us, I guess.
At least not until I can see a ROI on that $8, which I don't expect anytime soon. Anyway, I think that's about all we got. You know, come to Detroit, find a easily accessible and affordable hotel or Airbnb. There is, I guarantee you that whatever happened in this movie there's at least a 40% chance that it's not going to happen to you.
I was going to give 80%, but 40% is actually probably more realistic.
I don't think you're going to have this exact scenario, but it could go sideways. But we have Brew Detroit, and Brew Detroit's great. So go there.
Yeah, and Batch.
And Batch.
Right by each other.
BCD. There's all kinds of good stuff.
There's a lot of places in Detroit you can go for a good time.
Yeah.
That don't involve incest baby, crazy mutant ladies with milk bottles.
Incest rage giant naked ladies.
Insisting that you're her baby.
They really need to give that character a better name than the mother. Like, even if it was like...
The father.
Well, I mean, it is a male that plays her.
True.
Even if it was just like Nudie Rage Cesty or something like, I don't know. It's still better than the mother. All right. I think that's all we got. Yeah, that's all we got. So until next time, we'll talk to you about a movie that might or might not be horror related, or we'll, whatever. Cheers. Have a good week. All right. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast.
Wait. What about Welcome Back? Every episode starts with a welcome back.
I haven't got there yet. See, This is exactly what I mean. I fucked everything up right from the start.
Or I did. I don't know.
It's a collaborative effort. So